Okay.
I want to press the record so that we can have. Okay, good. Oh, great. Wow, good to see you, sir.
Yeah.
How are you, sir?
Nice to meet you too.
Wow, good.
Well, we're doing
good. So we are Philippines is 7 hours ahead of us.
Yeah, Philippines is 7 hours of Nigeria.
Oh, good.
So the time is
your time is 5 p.m. 5 p.m. over there.
5:20.
20 right now.
5:20 p.m.
5:20. Okay.
Yeah.
Over there, here is 10:20 a.m. exactly. Thank you for the opportunity meeting you. Honestly, I'm so excited about this, and I want us to start this way because honestly, I'm surprised when I saw the crowd, the crowd in your church. Surprised that you are leading a massive movement, a big movement in the Philippines. Tell me the story. What took you to that country in the first place?
Well, I cannot tell the full story without giving you a brief history of my background. Yeah. I was raised up in a family of politicians, academicians, and spiritual leaders. My granddad was one of the princes that came from the famous Augusto dynasty. As a prince, decided to become a missionary, so he became one of the first Anglican clergy in Nigeria.
Wow.
And so,
what year was that? In the 18 something?
Yes. And his children, he had 7 kids, 4 boys and 3 girls. They've all gone to be with the Lord now, and only one is surviving as an old woman. Okay. And his children grew up to be very influential people. My uncle was one of the first bishops in Nigeria to start a pioneer member of the PFN. He started PFN with Archbishop Benson. Bishop Michael Marioghae started with Archbishop Benson Idahosa.
Okay.
And so, great family friends.
Wow. And
Bishop Michael Marioghae of blessed memory was also a commissioner in the defunct Western region. And so my dad was also a local government chairman of Isoko local government area. And so he raised us up. He was a lawyer by profession. He passed on in 2007. So he raised us up with a sense of purpose. And when I was practically 7 years old, Archbishop Benson Idahosa, our family friend, laid hands on me and prophesied about my ministry.
Wow.
And I grew up with a sense of purpose that someday I was going to fulfill a great destiny, but I did not know the totality of that destiny. But from a very tender age, I had these visions. I kept seeing vision of Asia and specifically the Philippines, but I didn't know what it meant. And so eventually when it was time for me to go to the university, I went to the University of Jos, where I read the first course I read was mass communication.
Wow,
eventually went back to school to read law. Midway, I changed from law to political science. While I was studying political science, I got into student politics while I was still a minister there. And I became one of the first ministers to preach as a young man in Jos.
Wow.
And
you were in politics and at the same time doing missions.
Yes, because I told you about the background I came from, the family of
politicians and pastors.
Yeah, then one of the people I looked up to was Martin Luther King Jr. But the essence of combining 3 things, education, my family members were highly educated, gave me education. I gave me the desire to pursue education. And education means information, and you cannot transform a nation without information. And so I got into student politics. At the time I was graduating from University of Jos, I was given the highest award, Activist of the Year.
Wow.
I did my youth service in Abuja. In that Abuja, I became NYSC president. But there's another dimension.
Okay, the NYSC president or the NCCF president of the NCC Corpus Fellowship president. I want to get that area.
In NYSC,
camp.
That's yes.
In the camp.
I was in the camp. I was a platoon leader, leader.
All right.
Then, when I graduated, overwhelmingly, when I left the camp, I was made president. And by the time I did my community group as a president, my community group was the best in Abuja.
Oh, great.
But while I was in Jos, I was in this church. I don't want to call names, but it was in this church that I met some great men of God. But these men of God, they don't want to talk to themselves.
Wow, interesting.
And these men of God, for some reason, they don't want to bring the Jos link. One of them got the biggest church in Abuja right now. And another one left Jos and started a ministry in Abuja with controversies. So both of them have written their own stories concerning what really happened. But I can tell you, all came from that background. And eventually we went to Abuja and we started ministry there, but it was for a short.
What year was this?
After I left Jos, I was in Abuja in 2000.
Okay.
We started ministry in Abuja. And it was a prophetic apostolic ministry, and we're using the Sheraton. And I launched a book, and the book was entitled No Longer Afraid. And the book was it was on national news then, the Francolise show.
Yeah.
I don't know if you still have those.
No, they don't have it. It's been a long time now.
And that was the first book 7up made billboards to sponsor. Normally they don't sponsor.
Yeah.
And so I was in Abuja for a short while, but it was an interesting time in Abuja. And after that, I got an invitation to go to an Asian country, one of the richest Asian countries in the world, Brunei.
Okay.
And when I got to Brunei, I did not know I was going there to fulfill a prophecy. They said that nation, that tiny nation, but then the richest man in the world used to be the Sultan of Brunei. And so I stayed in that Brunei for 1 year, and God used me to carry out revival. The Muslim nation became alive with a Christian revival that took place. And that was when I met my wife, a professor, and we got married in 2004.
Brunei is where?
Brunei is a nation, a very rich nation in Southeast Asia. Yeah, it has a population of 300,000 people.
Wow.
And the average Bruneian's got 3 houses and 3 cars.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it used to be a British colony, and it's ruled by Sultan, who was the most powerful man, the richest man in the world one time. And from Brunei, I eventually found myself traveling to India because some men of God came, they saw what was happening and invited me to India. And in India, we have, I went there and God used me to carry out great exploits. And the average crowd used to be 100,000.
Wow.
100,000.
In India?
Yes. Yeah, we have all those pictures and the videos, and God worked miracles. So thus I became the youngest Nigerian evangelist traveling to different parts of the world. I've been to different parts of the world, Eventually, I came to the Philippines, and in the Philippines, by the time I came to the Philippines, was very difficult because the Pentecostal movement was still very young, and so many things were strange to them. They never did all-night prayer. So I was one of the first, if not the first minister to introduce the concept in all night. How to train my people to wake up midnight and pray. And initially, they said this is a bit strange. And we started with 8 people. And when I started checking from place to place.
Sorry, you started with 8 people.
Yes, in the Philippines.
In the Philippines, wow.
Yeah. And when I started with 8 people, I came across Christian churches, Pentecostal churches that existed for 20, 30, 40 years, and they had just 40 members. It was a very difficult place to park. And I was asking God, I said, how do you crack? What is the gateway? How do I take this nation for Jesus? And God gave me 2 keys. And the first key was that he gave me a scripture. He said, shine. I said, shine what? He said, arise and shine, for your light has come. And so I started a program, an evangelical program called Shine Philippines. Okay. And the first crusade we had, 5,000 people were led to Christ.
Wow.
5,000.
Amazing.
In a mall.
Amazing.
Parking lot of a mall. And eventually the revival fire just spread all over the place. We'll go to provinces to declare public holiday. You call them states in Nigeria, but it's called provinces in the Philippines. And so some governors were declaring public holidays to just see us have our program. Wow. And as of the time I came here, Nigeria did not have some of the Nigerians who came did not have a good reputation. And I didn't bother to defend my reputation. I said, people can argue issues, but you can't argue results. So when you result, and you determine whether I'm of God or not. The odds were against me, but I know the Bible tells me that he that comes from above is above all. And I also understand that the only thing the original mandate God gave to mankind was the mandate of dominion. If you check the Bible, there was no assignment given to mankind rather than the concept of dominion. Okay. The concept of dominion involves leadership. The planet is in a mess because humanity, instead of dominating this planet and dominating the created things of God, man is trying to dominate man. You cannot dominate man because man was not designed to be dominated
by man.
If you understand the concept of dominion that God put in place, he said, I've given you dominion. That was the first and only assignment God gave to man. You shall have dominion over creeping things, birds of the air, and everything in the sea. 3 realms that we have, man needs to conquer: the realm of the water, the realm of the earth, and the earth. And so when Jesus came to restore that mandate, which Adam had lost, he demonstrated 3 things. He walked upon the face of the earth. He deliberately walked on the sea to regain that mandate, and he walked on air before he left. And he said, greater things shall you do. The Bible tells me that wherever the soles of your feet shall tread upon, that you shall take for a possession. And I know that to create revival, you cannot establish revival without the concept of dominion. You cannot enforce dominion without, first of all, ruling yourself. You must have self-control. You must have mastery over your emotions. And so another concept God gave to me was this. I am the branch, I'm the vine, and you the branches. Without you, without me, you can do nothing. If you want your ministry to succeed, and you make it all about yourself, even when the ministry grows, the fruit it's going to produce will be chaos of the highest order. Now people say, why do we have revival? Why do we have many churches in Nigeria yet? Because in as much as I thank God for many churches, but activity without productivity is stupidity. Activity without productivity is stupidity. You can't continue to go into activities without transformation. The apostles turned the world upside down. When you make man-made empires, the gates of God will surely prevail.
Wow.
One of the things I told leaders, I said, I've never seen anywhere in the Bible where men owned churches. I do not own a church. I'm just the sheep. I'm just the shepherd of the church. The church does not belong to my wife or my two daughters. I personally think it is wrong, men of God, to own churches. The church must be run the way the apostles ran the churches. I have never been in charge of money since I started ministry. While I'm the chief fundraiser, I do not sign checks. I have nothing to do with the money of the church. If you want to have integrity, you want to have integrity, then you must be able to say, okay, my hands are clean. There's a process of transparency. I've always believed that kingdom wealth is for kingdom agenda, not for personal agenda. I believe that the kingdom concept of dominion is commonwealth. What is the use of having the most beautiful edifice when your church members are in poverty? So when I came, the church began to grow, but the people that came to church were worthless men, materially worthless, mentally bankrupt, spiritually compromised. I said, Lord, what do I do with people like this? He said, teach them the word of God. So I began to teach them. Those worthless men today, some became governors.
Wow.
Senators, our church produced senators, governors, rich businessmen, celebrities, beauty queens, and you name them. These worthless men were trained to become productive. And
all this in a space of less than 15 years or thereabouts, if I may interject.
As of the time we became thousands of members, second year anniversary, we're already thousands of members in the Philippines.
Wow.
And when we're about 6 to 7 years old, I built the first Christian cathedral, Pentecostal Christian cathedral in the Philippines.
Wow, wow, wow.
From 2007, because the church was registered in 2005, 2006, we got our certificate. From that time, we were able to raise a congressman who became a governor, and appreciation for what God's done for him. This governor eventually made me a special advisor, commissioner, special advisor. So I became the first man to become a governor.
You are a pastor and you also advise the governor.
So I was an official from 2007 to 2010. So, 2007 to 2010. 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 2007 to 2010.
Let me take you back to Nigeria. I'm interested in that transition from mass comm to politics, political science. Then you said you did law and all that. You didn't work with any of this. You didn't do any paid job before you went into ministry.
I worked as a journalist briefly in Jos, freelance journalist, and through that I was able to harness the strength of journalism. And after that, I read law for a while. Then I switched over to political science, and my dad was very upset because he wanted me to be a lawyer. He was a lawyer too. But thank God, the political science I studied eventually pushed me on the path of wanting to know things. And I didn't know that God was preparing me to be a pastor to politicians.
Interesting.
Yes. I eventually got, in 2010, I prophesied into a senator's life in the Philippines. I led him to Christ, and I told him, you are going to be the next president of the Republic of the Philippines. And he became President Aquino.
Wow.
Who made the Philippines economy grow, became the fastest growing economy in the whole of Southeast Asia.
Wow, interesting.
Yes. And so we were able to shape the landscape. If you come to this, you'll be shocked, the transition. Then when I was in the province of my wife, Quezon province, that province is known for mysterious typhoons, and the typhoons can come, and the typhoons they have names for them from alphabet A to Z in a year, destroying cities, destroying towns. The typhoon can even take a big trailer and just toss it around like a paper. And that province was known for the most chaotic province in Quezon, in the Philippines. So investors were not going there to do things. So I told the governor, I said, we have a problem in this province. My wife is from here and I want to live here. That means it's either I stay here with God's glory or the typhoon has to leave. They said, what do you mean the typhoon has to leave? I said, I'm going to banish this typhoon. It was documented. And I said, as long as I live in this province, there's not going to be one typhoon again. And for 7 years, documented in the history of the Philippines, for 7 years, there was no typhoon.
Wow.
Every time CNN, we say the typhoon is going to pass through that region, series of typhoons, they all mysteriously go through the South China Sea.
Wow.
And for 7 years I was in that province, there was no typhoon. As soon as I left, a few months later, typhoon hit that place.
Wow.
And the pastor told me, please come back and how to stop typhoon.
They asked you to come back?
Yes, they asked me to come back. But before I left, the city was so grateful for all the things that God had done for the people through my ministry that the city honored me by giving me the highest honor. They handed over the key to the city of Lucena. They handed it over to me as an award, and I became the first African to receive such award in Asia. And the other
now, I want to take you back again. You know, we need to clarify your Nigeria, the experience in Nigeria. How were you able to combine? Because I'm shocked that you said you were in politics, you're also doing God's work and all that. And it was like a normal thing for you. You know, how were you able to combine the two extremes conveniently without
the two extremes are not really extreme because the pastor is a servant. And the politician is just a servant. When you understand the servant leadership model, you serve as a servant. But what we are having right now in Nigeria, instead of the spirit of service, we have people who are trying to learn. You cannot be greater than the people you are serving. Leadership is for service. Power is given to serve. the one who serves is answerable to the one he serves. You cannot be greater than the state. That was why when Moses was leading the people of Israel and God was so angry with them, and he said, I'm going to wipe the people off the face and create for you a new set of people. Moses said, rather remove me from the book of life. A leader that is not ready to lay down his life for the sheep is no leader at all. If you have the servant leadership mindset, you will consider the position of leadership as a sacred trust. A trust that grows when you make promises and you keep to your promises. A trust that continues to grow when you magnify the principles of God above your personal interest. A trust that continues to grow when there is a performance of purpose. You can love people unconditionally, but you can't say, trust me. Trust is something you impose. It must be earned. But I'm surprised the way we do things in Nigeria. We just throw this sacred mandate to people. The Bible says concerning David, he said, I have pastored God's people. I've been a leader of God's people. I have used the integrity of my heart to pastor these people. When David was dying, what was the last advice he gave to Solomon? He said, Solomon, show to these people that you are a man. And how do you show to them that you're a man? Make sure you follow the principles of God, the principles of integrity and justice. How did we lose?
You know why I'm asking this question? We have been having this challenge back in Nigeria of even Christians getting into politics and messing up the place. You know, there have been people who claim to be born again. They get to a place of leadership and they lose their head. You know, so what was the, for you, you were able to navigate those ends. What is the winning streak for you? What is that thing that is, you know, I know you say God, but then what is that thing that makes you to do these things conveniently?
Okay. Yeah. The Bible says he who desires the office of a bishop desires a good task. While people are looking for the crown and the title, I'm looking for the task. If the task is the focus, you come out as a good leader. If the title is your focus, you are going to come out as a corrupt, compromised leader. That's the difference. Wow. A crown does not make a king. It is the king's behavior and principles that gives relevance to the crown.
Now you've been to the Philippines for 15 years now. Yes. By your 16 now by your reckoning. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, what exactly did you meet on ground? Because the stories we hear about Philippines, sometimes we hear cases of persecution. We hear all kinds of. What was on ground?
When I came, it was a highly compromised society. It was one of the most corrupt societies in the most corrupt nation in Asia.
Wow.
Killings, crimes, and terror, and all manner of things. So I used Global Shine Philippines with an agenda that, okay, one, we're going to rebuild the trust of the Filipinos. 2, we're going to make sure that the church functions well. 3, we're going to make sure that there is good governance in the Philippines. So I partnered with politicians. We produce no-nonsense leaders that were, I'm not saying you can eliminate, as long as you have humans, corruption will always thrive in any society. Yeah. But and minimize corruption to a point where it no longer affects the national destiny of the nation, then that nation is already good. Because as long as you have humans living and breathing, they are always going to do bad things. Corruption is part of the human nature, especially when that nature is not regenerated by being sanctified by the blood of Jesus. And so you're always going to have that. So what we did was we worked with leaders. We gave people enlightenment. The elected leaders that fought corruption. And Philippines, from being a debtor nation, became a creditor nation.
Wow.
And they gave over $1 billion to the World Bank, and it was rated as a creditor nation.
Wow.
When Aquino was president for 6 years, instead of having deficit, every year he had surplus.
Wow.
He had surplus. And so Philippines was rated the fastest growing economy in the whole of Southeast Asia. There's nothing I'm telling you now that you cannot verify.
Interesting. The story we hear is that the Asian countries are into voodoo, they are into all kinds of their oriental faiths, Buddhism.
Philippines is a Catholic liberal country with a touch of conservatism. Philippines is a Catholic liberal country with a touch of conservatism. Okay. And so English is widely spoken, and many of the Filipinos, they are Spanish Filipinos, American Filipinos. So US is the second home of the Philippines.
Wow.
And so we have all the American brands here, and some of the most beautiful women in the world are in the Republic of the Philippines. If you check pictures of Miss World, Miss International, Miss this, okay, they are all on check.
You married one of them? You married one of them?
Yes, they are all.
Oh, wow.
My wife is a doctor. My wife is a highly learned professor. She also worked with the Congress of the Republic of the Philippines as a consultant.
She's from there too?
Yeah. Yes, she's a Spanish.
Wow, interesting. So what's their language apart from English? Do you speak?
And they have a national language which is called Tagalog. Then the various regions, they have other dialects. But English is widely spoken by the people. But the national language is, they have both Tagalog and English. Then you have the Chinese spoken in some parts, because you also have Filipinos who are Chinese and things like that.
Now you talked about the Catholic domination in that environment. And I know where Catholics are, it can be very tough to really want to break in. You know, what was your experience in this regard? How did you?
First time we came here, they saw the Christian church, the Pentecostal Christian church, as a cult. And you cannot blame them to an extent, because the people went into extreme Christianity.
You mean the Pentecostals?
Yes. They were doing deliverances and commanding angels go get me this. So they were not quite balanced. So, and God helped me to bring that balance, sound teaching. And so the Catholics became so interested that they even invited me to some of the Catholic ministries to preach.
Wow.
And they gave me a Catholic national channel called Divine Mercy. They said, Bishop Tony, just preach. Preach. Just don't preach against Mama Mary. And so forth. I said, good deal, good deal. So I'm going to preach. I'm not going to preach against Mama Mary. And so for 1 year, people used to call me Father Tony because they thought I was a Catholic priest. And so that also helped my profile to spread. And all these things we did, and God performing miracles and signs and wonders. But what really got them was my message of transformation. People changed, and society, you know. And within a short while, the nation honored me with Honorable Father of the Nation Award, Dakinla Ama. Dakinla Ama means Honorable Father of the Nation. Yes.
I'm just overwhelmed with the kind of impact that God has used you to make in the Philippines. And I'm just wondering, because I know most Nigerian pastors, many, I won't say most, or just a few Nigerian pastors abroad, they end up gathering the same set of people from Nigeria in their ministries. you know, you don't see that diversity. You go to the US, you see the Nigerian church filled with Nigerians and a few other Africans. They don't really, I mean, get to the soul of people who live in that environment. But you have succeeded in breaking the genes. You have probably 99% foreigners who are entirely not Nigerians in your congregation.
99.9999%.
99%. Wow, you're probably the only black man or two. So how has it been? What were the steps you took to get to that point?
One, you cannot evangelize a people when you do not know them. The reason we've been unable to achieve that is we try to preach a gospel of domination rather than the gospel of dominion. Nigerian churches are very stubborn in this area. This is how we do it in Lagos. But even if we do it the way they do it in Lagos, does it mean it has to be done this way? Have you not noticed that they've written so many books on marriage, 5 steps to successful marriage, 9 steps to successful marriage, but we are still having the greatest marital problems in our time? Is it not so?
Yeah.
You know why? Because just as every human being is unique, every nation is unique. That's what Paul said to the Roman. I was Roman. You must look at what for every territory God gives to you, He gives you a strategy. And the strategy involves respecting the people, loving them, learning about their culture, and walking around using that. Paul went somewhere. He said, "Oh, you men of Ephesus, I perceive that you're very religious." He did not condemn the religious fervor, even when he knew that it was misdirected. He said, "I can see that you're very religious. Everywhere you have altars, you made altar to this altar." So he used that same line. He said, "Now you made an altar to an unknown God. You want to know more about this unknown God?" He said,
wow.
Yeah.
Wisdom.
His name is Jesus Christ. That was how he got a whole city saved. The truth is, I don't know if I should call it lack of wisdom or arrogance. When you impose the Nigerian thing on people, the gospel goes beyond the Nigerian thing. It is not a Nigerian gospel. It is the gospel of the kingdom. It is the gospel of dominion. When you preach that gospel, the central element of that gospel, faith, integrity, salvation, restoration, everyone will buy it. Because it's a good news. There's a way you can present a good news and you make it a very bad news. So that was what I simply did, understanding the culture of the people. And eventually, I became the most recognized and most respected born-again Pentecostal bishop in the Philippines. And so Filipinos say, "What did you do to our people? Trust you more than trust us." So that was what I simply did.
So how is it about, I mean, I'm sure there are other Nigerians in the Philippines. I know a few who are also doing God's work there. Do you have cause to also, rally the Pentecostals there? What kind of revival are you bringing to them in that direction?
Initially, I just ignored the Nigerians here because initially I ignored them in the sense that we were not collaborating, but I helped them, assisted them. But I discovered that they saw ministry as competition.
Wow, that's a problem.
They saw ministry as competition, and I was a bit perplexed because in ministry we do not compete; we complement one another. Every part supplies. So they were doing many things to practically sabotage me, including one guy from Southwest that came. I met him in Nigeria and he needed help. And through God's grace, we brought him here and we blessed him with 3 cars. We even I introduced him to the president of this nation, senators, and they were blessing him so much. But when I went to the US in 2017, he attempted to topple the ministry, the leader, and establish his own. And guess the people who encouraged him, they were fellow Nigerians. And I just
was it your own ministry? You brought him into your ministry to work with you?
Yes.
In Nigeria?
He decided to split it, he decided to do this. So I did not understand that type of psychology. And so there is this competition. So for a while I said, okay, if you are going to see my ministry as a threat, I'd rather keep away from you. But when I realized that they were going through a hard time, we decided recently, we did it before the pandemic, but after the pandemic, we recently came together again. So myself and some other pastors, we put together this organization called Confederation of African Pastors, Confederation of African Ministers, Pastors, and Churches, CAMPAC. And so that way I was able to gather all Nigerians together and other ministers from African countries. And so that's the association we have now.
So it's like your own PFN kind of a thing over there now.
Other than PFN, comprises of the whole African continent.
Okay.
And other pastors from other nations in Africa. Yes.
You mentioned Benson Idahuza laying hands on you at the age of 7.
Yes.
I'm just imagining that background. When exactly did you have the experience of God in specific terms?
Because I came from a godly family, they told me that I've always had the hand of God upon my life. But as a young man, I wanted to forge my own path. I wanted to forge my own path. And so when I went to the university, away from my family, for me, that was a way to discover myself, because I felt that my faith was imposed. You have to go to church, you have to do this. So as a free young man, I wanted to find out things for myself. So I said, hold on, I want to be neutral. So I started searching for God. I read, name any other religion you can think of. I studied then. But the more I studied, because I had a problem then with the mystery of predestination. I said, okay, if in my philosophical mind, if Judas was already condemned, why would God blame him for doing what he did?
Valid question.
Yes. And if he was already condemned that he was going to do this, was it not just a pawn in the hands of
God?
So why would he be punished? So I had problems. My social justice mind, my activist mind was questioning faith then. And so I was still searching for God, and I was not committed, but I was not doing some bad things. So I even tried to go to the nightclub to sing. I attempted to drink, and I threw up. And I coughed like crazy. I had a girlfriend. I attempted to do things with a girl. For some reason, my body wouldn't function. And I was very upset. Tried to explain it. Maybe I was too excited. Maybe I was too do, but I didn't know that God was preserving my destiny. And one day I became sick, and I'm the type that does not really get sick. So I had this typhoid fever, and they treated and treated and treated, and they said it was affecting my, my red blood or white blood. And so in my desperation, I went to the room and I said, God, I know you exist. That's what they told me, but I have questions about you. And I have questions, real, some big questions. But if you heal me, I'm going to serve you. Instantly, something like a golden drops of rain came upon me. I was totally healed. But after that experience, I told myself, maybe I harnessed the energy of my mind. Why should I give that glory to God? Maybe it's just a coincidence. For 1 week, God did not allow me to sleep every night, and I did not fall sick, but He did not allow me to sleep. I knew that was God. He said, you have to keep your bargain. So at the end of 1 week, I was frustrated, and I told God, I said, okay, I'm going to serve you.
So
I did not come.
You could not sleep for 1 week. Continue, sir. I'm just...
Keep your bargain. So I said, okay, I'm not going to, I didn't come from a poor home. So if I'm going to preach, you are going to make me wealthy. If you don't pay me well, I'm out. I'm your salesman. If I'm going to preach, if you don't heal the sick, I'm out. I want the type of power that you gave Elijah. And I want, if my people are asking questions, I want to talk to you. And if you don't answer me, I'm out. God said, is that all? I was so proud to say yes. Everything you asked for, I'm going to give it to you. I said, okay. He said, but on the condition that if you defile yourself, I'm going to kill you.
Wow. You heard his voice or just an impression?
His voice in my spirit. Defile yourself, I will take your life. To whom much is given, much. In other words, before you marry, you must not go into premarital sex. I said, why would you do this to me? Other young men are doing it. God said, in other words, what I understood, they did not ask what you were asking. So fear came upon me. I knew that was not a joke. And so the consecration thing, came. And thank God, God told me that because it helped me to keep myself on the fight. I'm not saying what I did is it's not what made me like this.
Is a parameter for getting to this level.
But I think that established the integrity thing. It also gave me boldness. We saw miracles. Then for 1 year, a voice was speaking to me. When I heard that voice, I thought, I was afraid. I said, people heard voices and they became crazy. I hope I'm not going to be crazy. Preaching to me about the Bible, teaching me. So my Bible school practically was done by Jesus Christ himself. At the end of 1 year, Jesus appeared to that room. The experience was so different.
Wow.
He came into that room because of the, he told me, God told me not to do this, not to do this. So I became self-righteous. I was conscious of the sacrifice I made. When I stand before people, who is this sinner coming close to me? So I'm a sanctified vessel. So that was my understanding of the faith. I was carrying out miracles because I thought it was my right. I didn't understand anything about God's grace. Then when Jesus showed up, if you see the way I cried from that 2 a.m., he showed up till 6 a.m. Because he came with so much strength. When I looked into his eyes, he had so much strength. and yet so much compassion. How can you carry both compassion and strength at the same time? But I forgot I was looking into the eyes of the lion and the lamb. Then suddenly I could not go near him because I saw that my righteousness, all the that I did, filthy rags. And he asked me one question. And when he was talking to me, it was my his spirit talking to my spirit. I realized that when God talks to you, when you meet him, it's your spirit that communicates. So he told me, he said, why do you work miracles? I answered quickly. 1 Corinthians 4:20. The kingdom of God is not in words, but in power. He told me that was wrong, the wrong reason for carrying out miracles. He spoke back to me. Matthew 14:14. When Jesus saw the multitude, he had compassion over them and he healed them. I broke down. I saw how cruel my heart was. I discovered I had a religious mind, but not a reformed, completely reformed mind. You see, I fear for religion because religion gives you self-righteousness. And unfortunately, some of the things we see back home is the practice of religion. Because when there is a relationship, transformation takes place. You can practice religion and still see signs and wonders. But it's only when you have a relationship, see love and transformation. And after that, my ministry, the healing ministry, took a new dimension. It came with a lot of compassion and wisdom. And I thank God today that team is a product of that compassion and wisdom.
Yeah, talking about team, TEA, is that an acronym?
Yes, it simply means the Evangelical Ark Mission.
Okay, or the Philippines.
It's an international ministry. Okay. It's an international ministry. In the Philippines, we have thousands of members and many churches. In Pakistan, we have about 100,000 members. It's one of the first ministries to be registered, one of the first Christian churches, Pentecostal Christian churches, to be registered by the Pakistan government.
Even with the persecution, I'm sure there is Islamic domination there.
Yes. Right now, we are building in Pakistan. And the couple that heads the ministry, both of them are graduates. They hold MBA each.
Okay.
And the license they give to churches in Pakistan, you renew it every year. And that license gives you the authority to have radio and TV station, gives you the authority to have a private militia, an army with guns.
Wow.
Gives you the authority to have schools and universities and hospitals. I said, wow.
Interesting.
For guns, I said, forget about the guns first. Let's get the books going and the Bible.
But what's this story about persecution in Asia generally? Especially for Pakistan, for instance, we read reports of.
In Muslim countries, it's real. There are laws that they put in place against Christians, and these laws are called blasphemy laws. If a Muslim goes out to say you blasphemed against the prophet, other Muslims can kill you instantly.
In Pakistan?
In Pakistan.
So how do you manage that end? You have a church, a 100,000-seater church in that.
To make sure that they become like they bless the community, and by blessing the community government leaders protect them.
Okay.
It's tough. Christians like fowls. You can just say Christian did this. One of the Muslims can go to your house and say you taught the Quran. That's enough for them to kill you instantly. Enough
evidence to kill you.
And
even without verifying.
Yes, even without, even there's a couple they put in a drum of fire, they burnt them. They still do it today.
Wow. And you are in that environment and going on?
Well, the gospel's always been spread through violence. Right from the days of John the Baptist, God's kingdom has suffered violence, and it takes the violent to take it by force. So, and there's always this element, because Christianity is the only faith that says we should spare our enemies, not to kill them. We should pray for our enemies, but almost any other faith talks about punishing your enemy. Yes. Our strength is also one of the reasons why people from other faiths, they attack.
But what has been your own personal experience when it comes to persecution, going through the countries of Asia to do missions?
Well, when I went to Malaysia one time, I was arrested at the airport and commanded, deported back home. But in Dubai, I appealed the case. And when we got to Dubai, I was able to break that deportation thing. Okay. Then in Brunei, I was banned from going there.
Where?
In
Where?
Brunei.
Brunei, okay. That was the first country. That was the first country you went to?
Yes, in Asia.
In Asia, yeah.
The first country in Asia that I lived in.
Okay.
The Sultan of Brunei signed that this should, ban me from entering his country, because when I went there, I was prophesying. You know that tsunami that came in 2004? The biggest.
Yeah, I remember.
I gave a prophecy that a storm was going to come and it's going to hit this. So they recorded that down. I also gave other prophecies. So the Muslims who were there, they got saved. They got saved in the sense that the Holy Book tells them that one man is the only last prophet. And so they said, how come we have another prophet? Because this man who came to our nation is a prophet. So because of that, some of them got saved. And the place I was living became like a holy ground. People were coming from Indonesia, coming from Malaysia, and they would go there and instantly healing hits them. So the Brunei government had to station policemen there because the crowd was something else.
Wow. So just we'll see, I want to talk Christians, and we'll wrap up so I don't take your time. I know you are a very busy man. I want you to talk a bit about your experience of Bishop Idahosa before you left Nigeria.
Archbishop Benson Idahosa was our family friend. And Mama Idahosa, Mama Margaret Idahosa, she's my spiritual mother. And Bishop Feb and the rest of them I consider them family. Archbishop Benson Idahosa was highly misunderstood, but I consider him the greatest apostle that Nigeria ever produced. He was not just a national apostle, he was an apostle to the whole world. So those people who say they came from Papa Idahosa, who claim to be Papa Idahosa children, they are not manifesting what he stood for. He was a man of integrity. Remember that time Babangida made a decree, an executive decree, that Christians can no longer gather. And Archbishop Benson Idahosa summoned all the Christians to TBS, Lagos. He said, tell that young man that the prophet is greater than the king. And Babangida was helpless. He could not arrest anybody. I believe that when God gives a prophet to a nation.
Sorry, was there a decree like that? I can't even remember.
Like an executive order, yes. When he said, no longer have open air meeting.
Okay, open air. Okay.
But Papa Idausa summoned all Christians to TBS, and he held an meeting. So he was bold. You have no right calling yourself a national prophet when you cannot address national issues. A national prophet is given a national mandate, a spiritual mandate to speak and address national issues. No? And so, and a national prophet must be non-denominational with the ability to speak to the body of Christ. I really don't know if we have those prophets. We have those prophets. Why are we still in this confusion? And, this is not an indictment on any ministry, but being a national prophet is not a position you take upon yourself. It's a position that manifests. Understand? Yep. Elijah did not claim. Elijah did. We don't have a spiritual direction now in that country. It reminds me of the time in Israel when there was no king and everyone did what they thought was right. And we have seen very funny men of God manifest after Papa Idausa left. Controversial ministries.
All kinds.
And this is not good.
You don't have a branch here in Nigeria. You don't think of, you're not thinking of coming to Nigeria?
We used to have a branch in Abuja, but it was not properly managed. And so the pastor there practically did what most Nigerians do, and broke away.
He broke away with the branch.
And he established his own. Someday I'm going to come to Nigeria, but not to, we have had too many churches now. I want to do a ministry that is all inclusive.
Okay.
Ministry that can break barriers. Because if I go set up a church now, it's just going to be among one of those competition again, but I'm going to do a ministry that will be a blessing to the body of Christ. I intend to do that.
As it is now, you are more in Asia, and you have your branches across Asian countries.
Not just Asian countries. We have Team USA. We have Team California.
Okay.
And we have Team Australia, and an affiliate church in Australia. And we have Team Kenya. We have Team in Congo. We have Team in Tanzania.
Okay, wow.
In all these countries. Team Japan. So I just don't want to countries. I don't want to go to just everywhere. I want to put in strategic places.
Wow, interesting. Yeah. Now, how do you oversee this mass of? What's your style of leadership? Because I see that you have a lot of people around you. How do you keep your cool? And to even have time for this conversation, it's amazing for me with the mass of work.
Now, the reason people fail to follow a leader is this. Leadership is an investment. The question you ask yourself is, who is this person you're following? Is he strong? Is he morally strong? Is he reliable? Is this someone that can protect your spiritual, mental, and physical interest? Is he a user? When you serve people in such a way, you lead people in such a way that they believe that your leadership is no threat to their destinies to follow. When you lead people in such a way that gives them the confidence that you are not there for yourself, but for their welfare, to follow you. When you lead people in such a way, it does not matter whether they are this or that. am the only, this is the first time that people from every race, including Chinese, out to my leadership.
Wow. But that's not the case in Nigeria. I know leaders that are terrible, that are draconian, that drives their flock crazy, and yet people still follow them. How do you reconcile it?
Because there are two types of leadership. A leadership by force, based on fear, and mental programming. Leadership comes by influence, backed by compassion and love for that person. I've always said my style of leadership is, if you want to see whether you're a leader, drop the threat, free the people. If they follow you, then you're a leader.
And sometimes the threat could be subtle.
Yes. For instance, now
it could be blackmail. Yeah.
What you have in China and Russia now, do you call that leadership? The people have no choice. They are afraid. Leadership is giving people freedom and see whether they'll still follow you. So in team, what we do is, just like Jesus, Jesus told them, he said, you are now my friends. In leadership, my pastors, I see them as my partners in ministry, and they are my friends. So instead of I, it becomes a we thing. Yes.
So tell us about your wife. I'm interested in that aspect.
My wife is Spanish, Filipino, and professor. We have two love.
You met her as a professor?
Yes, in Brunei.
In Brunei, okay. How did you meet? What brought you together?
The place I was invited to preach. She was the secretary of that church.
Okay.
And so within a short while, God told me that she was my wife. And God told her that that's your husband. And while I was praying for people, she was the only one I didn't pray for. I didn't prophesy on her. And so within a short while, somehow God connected us, and some funny things happened. 3 times that we went to church. The first time I wore the white shirt and a black pant, and I was not talking to her. She wore a white shirt and a black pant too.
Wow.
And the elders said,
there's a connection.
I wore a blue shirt top, and a blue pant. They shoot the same.
Okay.
I said, what's going on here? Then the third time I said, I'm going to wear something impossible, a pink shirt and something. And guess what? She wore the same thing.
Wow. Interesting. What country was that then?
Brunei.
You are in Brunei. Okay. You are in Brunei. Wow. So you eventually got married?
Yes, we got married. We came to the Philippines, got married, but our wedding was fourfold. We did a Philippines wedding, church and civil wedding in the Philippines. We went to Brunei. I'm an adopted son of the Indian community. So we did an Indian wedding. Then we did another international wedding in Brunei.
Wow, interesting.
Where we did an international wedding.
Interesting. Wow. I'm so excited about this conversation. I'm sure we're going to take it up again some other time as God gives us the grace. Just to cap up, Nigeria is in a bit of a dilemma now. We are moving on to another government in 2023. You have been in politics. You have related with politicians and all that. What's your counsel What's your reading of the mood in Nigeria now, and what future do you see for this country?
Well, every hopeless country can become hopeful again if the people do the right thing. Satan does not have the power to determine the destiny of Nigeria. And God cannot make Nigeria paradise on earth without our cooperation. And we know the right thing: justice and mercy based on integrity. We know that the problem of Nigeria is not poverty, but leadership failure. We've never had a leader that gave Nigeria, for instance, you travel to the US, you say we have the American dream. We have the Nigerian dream. Even after independence, what was the centerpiece of Nigeria's foreign policy? The centerpiece of Nigerian foreign policy was Africa. Now, some of these countries in Africa that we fought for, we gave money to, how did they pay us back? Look at South Africa. They hate Nigerians. Look at some other African nations. They hate Nigerians. So it's time now for Nigerians now to look for a leader that can give us a national identity, because as long as the parts are still fighting, most Nigerians see themselves as, they don't see the man from this, the Yoruba man sees himself, I'm a Yoruba man before being a Nigerian. The Hausa man does the same thing. So as mean as Abacha's leadership was, he tried to address this thing, to break the stronghold of one group dominating over another group. That's why Abacha was the only leader that made Nigeria, created Nigeria in such a way, created six geopolitical entities so that Nigeria can have balance, so that no group can dominate the other. Have we been able to progress from that level? The answer is no. If we want agitation to stop in Nigeria, then we should do rotational presidency, absolute rotational. If it comes to the South, it must go through the 3 regions of the South. And if it goes to the North, it must pass through the 3 regions of the North. If every group feels that they have a taste
of the center,
then no one is going to agitate. You cannot bring people together based on injustice. We've never had a constitution in Nigeria that truly reflects the will of the people. The one we inherited was given to us by our colonial master. Then the other one we got was given to us by the military, non-elected representative of the people. They didn't represent them. When the military put the constitution in place, they were thinking of preserving the status quo, preserving their interests. We need a national sovereign conference where you cannot restrict. For instance, you say, let's negotiate, and someone is calling the agenda. You cannot talk about this. We have to talk about everything until Nigeria is ready. I pray that we elect leaders who are open to the ideas of having a national sovereign conference.
Do you see the church fitting into this?
Yes, the church is the most powerful institution in the country. Do you know why? People cannot die for, many people can die for their convictions, but only few can die for their political beliefs.
Yeah.
And the church is the moral voice of the country. Religion, many people die for religion. It's time now for the church to come out with bodies, create bodies that can enlighten the people, to tell them that if you sell your vote, you sell your moral right to hold your elected representatives into accountability, to hold them accountable for their actions. Because you don't use one wrong to correct a wrong. Two wrongs cannot make a right. What sacrifice are Nigerians willing to make? Nation building involves sacrifice. We must teach our people that the journey to the better Nigeria we're looking for must start with sacrifice and having the right choices, not choices based on religion or ethnicity, but based on objectivity, truth, and justice.
Thank you so much, Reverend Tony. I'm so grateful for this, for your time. I know how busy you are. I hope we'll take this conversation up next time when we have cause to also meet again. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah.
For information about me, you can go to Wikipedia, Tony Marioghae.
Of course, I would do all the necessary background checks. And
okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah.
To voice, spiritual voice to the nation in Jesus.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, sir. God bless you. All right. Bye. And waiting for all.